This here's the wreck of the Mary D Hume. It's been here for so long, and the history of this hull is really outstanding.
The story of the Mary D Hume starts with a man named Robert Hume, who moved from Maine to Oregon to establish a salmon trading empire. He successfully did this and founded the town of Gold Beach. However, he needed some ships to do the work for him, so after one of his ships grounded and they salvaged some parts including the engines, they decided to build a new ship. The keel of the ship was floated down the Rogue River and was made out of a single tree, one of the largest they could find. Finally, though, on February 20th, 1882, the ship was launched to a crowd of spectators. The ship would now serve the community. Her purpose would not originally be as a tugboat, but rather to carry everything the town made out of the town to other communities for selling, and they would bring back various things that a town needs to run, as well as lumber. After only 9 years of this, she was sold to the Pacific Whaling Company, who, of course, turned her into a whaling ship. The ship looked very different from her original look, and in fact was even rigged with sails and turned into a brigantine. Now, there isn't much photos of the ship in this state, so I'll just show some photos of whaling ships to pass the time. After a storm that damaged her a bit, she was to set off on one of the most significant voyages ever, one of the most lucrative whaling voyages in history, with 34 kills. Take that, Japan. Her next voyage would be the Yukon. Now, many people may be thinking, wait, isn't the Yukon landlocked? Well, no, the Yukon has a small coastline. In fact, at the time, people even lived on this coastline. However, the crew struggled to find any whales, so they waited in the Arctic for 6 years, often hanging out with the natives and even sometimes abandoning their ship completely to go to the nearby island in which some natives lived. This was the town of Herschel on Herschel Island. Well, today it is a ghost town. Back then, it had everything that the community needed and could also supply the nearby whaling ship through the long winters. In fact, one of the boats that they used to get there is still at Herschel Island today, so if somehow you ever make it out there, I mean, there's no one living near there and there's not even a runway, but if you somehow make it over to Herschel Island, let me know. After setting the record for the longest whaling voyage ever, they finally gave in. Suicide attempts and many other tragedies became common on the ship, as many winters can do to someone. So, they finally decided to head back, but not before encountering another storm on their way back, killing 2 more crew members.
Eventually, though, all those years, and she had to move roles. The ship was eventually just turned into this tugboat here.
The ship was eventually just turned into a freighter and sold to the Northwest Fishing Company. She served as a freighter until sinking near a river. She was eventually raised and purchased by the American Tugboat Company. Finally, in the 1970s, however, she was retired. And finally returned back to Gold Beach, her ancestral homeland, with a fleet of boats escorting her. Many donated to help her become a museum ship, which, that was the plan. However, as they raised the ship up on a sling to allow work to be done underneath, the sling collapsed and the ship sank.
I would swim out to the wreck now, and the water here is actually pretty clear. But it's a little cold, and even out of the water my hands are already freezing. Eventually, as you can see here, attempts were made to raise the ship. However, this didn't happen, and the ship broke in half and slammed right back down into the water, crushing the top superstructure.
Although the ship was a total loss, she became an icon of the town, for better or for worse. In 2018, the wheelhouse of the ship collapsed, and she sits in her current state as she has ever since then. The ship's story, I find, is quite unfortunate. She served for so long, and although her story is somewhat well known, she never became a museum ship, and I think her story should be more well known, because this is certainly a ship that has had one heck of a career.